Imagine a journey through life where every step is a declaration of authenticity and every moment is a testament to resilience. Meet Taylor, a beacon of courage and inspiration in a world that often fails to understand the depths of individual identity. Growing up with the dual heritage of immigrant parents, Taylor's story is a narrative threaded with tradition, struggle, and triumph. From navigating the complexities of culture and heritage to forging an unapologetically authentic path as a transgender woman, Taylor's journey is remarkable as it's transformative. Join us as we delve into her story, exploring the nuances of her experiences and her unshakable spirit. This is Woman in the Making, Season 2. Taylor, I'm so fortunate that you agreed to be on the show today at Women in the Making. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
I love to start segment 1 with your roots of, where you come from, your culture, your background. How did your upbringing with immigrant parents shape your perspective towards life?
That's a great question. I think that there's a lot of different ways that has impacted my life. I think first and foremost, coming from immigrant parents, you have a certain set of beliefs and values that are implemented into you, for better or for worse. My parents did the best that they could, and they didn't have a lot of money when they came here. They were both born in the Philippines, but met in the U.S. They both come from pretty big families. My dad is one of 5. He's the oldest of 5. My mom is the second youngest of 14.
14! So, that's a huge family.
Yeah,
so you have a lot of cousins.
Exactly. And because my mom was the second youngest, most of my cousins were older than me. But I think that the biggest thing that instilled in me was that my parents were very, very dead set on us being successful, right? Almost all immigrant parents, they moved to the United States because they want a better future for their kids. And I saw that and I was like, I don't want to let them down. I see how hard they're working. I want to do all those things. And so I don't blame them for this, but it's kind of like the beginning of society's, I guess, the American dream's impact of my life, of how I'm going to approach life, And I was raised not in a bigger city. I was raised in Springfield, Oregon, which is about 2 hours south of Portland. So very working class, very white. And so kind of straddling the lines of being proud of my Filipino heritage, but also trying to assimilate almost to American culture was really difficult. I wasn't white enough for the white kids. I wasn't brown enough for the brown kids. I realized I was queer from a pretty young age. And so anything that was outside of the norm made me really uncomfortable because I felt like I had no place where I belonged. I never learned Tagalog, which is our native tongue. And so it kind of just really implemented this feeling of being lost. But also my parents really were like, if you just work hard, go to school,
you'll make it.
Exactly.
Yeah. And you mentioned that you knew that you were queer from a very young age. How did you actually start realizing that? How young were you?
I was young. I remember playing house growing up, and I was always the mom. But I think that age, kids are just my parents were like, okay, yeah, they're playing house. None of this is real. So they're just pretend let them play. Honestly, so before I transitioned, I didn't have really any crushes until middle school. That was kind of when everything started to...
Yeah, I think that's the right age as well, right?
I feel like they're probably... when you're in elementary school or younger, your parents are always like, who's your girlfriend? Who's your boyfriend? As for fun. But in middle school, I feel like as your body's changing, all of a sudden you're like, this person makes me feel a certain way.
Yeah.
And I was also raised Mormon. This is a whole nother...
that is interesting.
Yeah, I was raised Mormon
I would have not guessed that at all.
That's I guess a fun fact. And so that made it even more important for me to kind of stick to the rules and stick to
they
lines.
have strict rules.
Yeah, and it was again, overwhelmingly white. There weren't a lot of people that looked like me. I think we might have been the only brown people in
That's
our
what
church.
I was just going to ask. Maybe when you go to the church, you were probably the only brown person there.
But yeah, it was a hard experience, but I'm really, really grateful for it. It taught me a lot about resilience from a very, very young age. And I definitely started knowing that I was different from everyone else, probably in middle school, for sure.
How did you navigate through the intersectionality of your race, gender, and diversity? Because it's a hard balance.
Yeah, I could be real honest. I was not good at it for most of my life. I felt like because I felt the need to be a part of a community. I felt the need to just be the same. And so there were parts of my life where I wanted to be white. I wanted to be
Mm.
heterosexual. I wanted to be quote unquote
Yeah.
normal, right? And it took a lot of time and a lot of surrounding myself with like-minded people and people
Yeah.
who celebrated my differences. I remember I moved to Seattle, the Seattle area, a month after I turned 21.
Mm.
And I moved to Capitol Hill. For those of you who aren't familiar with Seattle, it's the
Yes,
neighborhood.
it
It's a blast.
is.
It's super
I was just
fun.
gonna say you were in the perfect place
Yeah.
and the perfect residence.
Yeah, is a great city. Everything's going to be amazing. And then, like, day one, I realized, and my naivety was that I didn't realize how much racism permeated even in the queer community, even in a community that's
Is
already
it?
oppressed. Oh, for sure.
Oh,
And so it felt like,
I would think like they all belong to one big
right.
community.
It was really eye opening, and it really was just like, oh, this is something I want to deal with, this intersectionality everywhere I go. And actually, the reason why, like, the way I got into the community and kind of got out of my shell was I started drag in 2012.
Mm.
So I started drag on Capitol Hill as a way to get into the community, to be larger than life, to honestly to hide, even to just be
Yeah.
someone else, because I never felt like I was even part of the queer community.
Mm.
And so that helped me to bring me out of my shell. I was Miss Gay Seattle Pride in 2013.
Mm.
I was Miss Gay Washington in
Yay.
2015. So I did all these amazing things and got into the community. But there's still a lot of work internally for me to do to kind of unpack what it meant to be queer, what it meant to be brown, what it meant to be all
Mm.
these things, and how that made me navigate every single space differently.
No.
It really was just kind of trial by fire, where I just had to experience life and
Mm.
figure out what my priorities are
Yeah.
and who I am as a person. And that was kind of my first introduction to, like, oh, you can create your own
Mm.
person.
Yeah. You can.
You can
It's
create
you
your own person.
versus you, right?
Exactly.
Most of the times, I think in life, people forget that you're actually most challenged by your own self. But community plays such a big role in our life.
For sure.
So, as much as I can by heart say it's you versus you, I know for a fact that community and being around, feeling like one of them is also very important.
Yeah.
Taylor, when we spoke a little while back, you mentioned you experienced trauma from 2018 to 2020. And, traumas are some things that stay within your life forever. But there is a way that you can emerge stronger. So, how have these, shaped and how have you navigated through them?
Yeah, I feel like I'm currently in my Renaissance era, like maybe end of 2020, 21 to now. And
Mm,
I consider almost 2018 to 2020 is like the dark ages for me, where
mm,
I kind of lost everything. And like we talked about earlier with family, I thought that I had to, you know, graduate college, get married, buy a house, do all those things. And at 2018, I was in my late 20s, I was 27. I had done all those things. I had
mm,
finally graduated college, I'd gotten married, I'd bought a house, and I still was so unhappy. And
mm.
something wasn't right. And I knew that keeping going on the status quo wasn't going to get me anywhere. I wasn't severely unhappy. I think I could have probably stayed married even.
Yeah.
And he's a great guy. We're still best friends. But I knew that I needed to start prioritizing myself and start prioritizing what I wanted as opposed to what I thought society wanted.
So I want to rewind you a little bit
Yeah.
here. You said you did get married.
Yeah.
I think I would like to hear a little more story about how did that work out for you? I think because I feel like I missed an entire phase of your
Yeah.
life before.
Of that relationship, but we were cordial at least. I married pretty young. I was 22, 23 when I got married.
Hmm.
It was like maybe my second serious relationship that I'd ever been in. My first one as an adult, really. And I really struggle with self-worth and self-value and self-image. And so the first opportunity of someone that I kind of fell in love with, I just kind of ran with it. And
Mm.
I'm very lucky. He's a great guy. We've worked together a few times even. And I think we just got married really young and we kind of didn't know what we were
Yeah.
doing. I was also his first serious relationship. So we spent our 20s together. We grew up together. And eventually we just were like, I think we're just best friends. Like, I think we could
A
both be
partner in
happier.
you.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think we could both be even happier with other people. And I just was mourning what I thought that I wanted my entire life. I was like, what are you doing? Like, you're literally throwing away everything your parents wanted for you.
Yeah.
But I was like, but is it what I want for me?
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, like, because I had kind of relied on outside validation, I kind of got lost in the beginning of 2018. I did graduate college, but then it was a lot of soul searching. A lot of mistakes were made. I kind
Yeah.
of personally spiraled. Um, I got a DUI, which
Oh.
is like, that was kind of the beginning of my, like, I need to change something.
Yeah.
And not my proudest moment, and I own up to it. I will never shy away from it. I'm literally an open book. And so I made that mistake. I owned up to it. I started to put my life back together. In that time, time being lost, like, it just was like one of the last things where I'd also been sexually assaulted. Like, it just was
Oh, this
so
is so
much going
sad.
on where I felt like I was like, and it all started happening after the divorce. And I was like, what is the universe telling me? Like, why do I feel like everything's falling apart ever since I chose myself? And there was a lot of regret. There was a lot of like,
Yes,
you
there
could have
is.
just stayed
Were
and
you in
literally
the wrong
none of
place
this
at
would have
the wrong
happened.
time
Yeah,
when you were assaulted?
I felt like I had trusted this person, and I felt like it was one of those cases where I kind of just woke up and things were happening, and I was
Oh
like,
my
was
God.
just frozen in fear. And it just was, it was really hard to, I've always been a person that struggles with speaking up, actually, and struggles with standing up for myself. I think it kind of harpens back to being raised by immigrants, where it's very much
So
don't
true.
talk back, don't show your
Yeah.
emotions, all those things. And so I've been so used to just keeping everything in, as far as like anything that makes me feel uncomfortable. So there was also a lot of me that felt like I blamed myself, because I was like, why didn't you just stop it?
Yeah.
And that took a lot of healing, to just be like, that's not your fault. Like, and
Yeah.
none of that is your fault. And it just was this constant spiral. Then we get to 2020, and this is even before the pandemic happened, which is a whole other thing we could even talk about. But my dad died suddenly in
I'm
March.
so
And
sorry.
we had talked earlier about how my dad had this strained relationship. And by 2020, we actually were on great terms. And that was something, after I moved to Seattle, after I moved away from home, I think we grew closer because we had space apart. And it broke me, because he finally was asking about my love life. He came to my drag shows. He would, like, was so supportive, and was like the father
That's
that I always
lovely.
wanted. Yeah, it was, I was cherished that so much. And then it was gone. And then the pandemic happened. And so it was all these things that kind of tested, like, why am I alive? Why am I doing this? Why do I keep trying if nothing is happening for me? Nothing's going on. And it was really hard through those years. But I had to lose everything in order for me to rebuild myself,
Mm.
honestly. And
And it's really hard to rebuild
yeah,
yourself from scratch zero.
yeah. I mean, that's what I felt like, where I was like, okay, this career isn't working out. Your identity. This is when I also started to really question my identity
Yeah.
as a trans
Mm-hmm.
woman,
Mm-hmm.
because I had lost everything. And being in the pandemic and being by myself, I've been laid off of work. I'm just sitting in my apartment every single day, wondering to myself, like, what are you gonna do for the rest of your life? Like, I knew that at that point, if I kept going where I was going, I was not gonna live much longer. And I was like, something has to change. Like, you have to stop living for other people. You have to make
Yeah.
yourself.
I'm so glad you said that.
Yeah, like, you have to start taking account of what you want to do and what's going to make you happy.
Question, relearn everything that you've learned from
Yeah,
the childhood and
exactly.
rebuild yourself from ground zero. I think I love that because I think this is very important for many of us who are in similar situations or some unique situations where they are not able to come out. You exactly also answered my next question, which was importance about self-love and acceptance, right? How does that portray in your life currently?
Yeah, I think it's every single day choosing myself and
Hmm.
really being very, very careful with what I even expose myself to. I think social media is something that is really, really powerful because it's brought a
Oh,
lot
it
of
can be
people into my
also
life.
very toxic.
Exactly. Like I've gotten to talk to, I've documented my transition on my Instagram, on my
Yeah.
TikTok, and that's brought a lot of really cool people in my life who are just
Mm-hmm.
like, hey, I kind of need help with this, or what was your
Oh,
advice on this?
that's
And it's like,
great.
I don't need to be a celebrity. I don't need to be this big time influencer, but just being able to help people and
Sure.
even just to listen to people is,
So are they in similar situations?
yeah, I get a lot of, I've even talked with parents of kids who are trans. I've talked to trans people themselves who are adults. I've get
Hmm.
in inbox messages almost weekly from people
Wow.
locally, from people abroad, even people who know me are like referring me to their friends and stuff. And so
This
it's
is
been so
definitely a
great.
side career for you,
You know what?
Taylor.
It's funny.
This is great. And you
Yeah,
talk really well. So I guess we've already found a new
yeah.
career for you.
That's one of the many things I've been considering of
Women
just
in
like,
Black have found a new
yeah,
career.
exactly. I find self love from affirmations by surrounding myself with community
Mm,
and also by helping others.
that's great.
Yeah.
Taylor, what led you to pursue your gender affirming surgeries? And how did they impact your sense of self?
Yeah, so my journey with surgeries was kind of a slow burn, honestly. When
Mm,
I first came out as trans in 2020, I didn't even know what that meant for me. I just knew that how I was presenting and the way I identified needed to change.
mm,
Right? It was the same thing that happened a few years earlier with the divorce, honestly, where I was like, what I'm doing right now is not who I am or what I need to
yeah.
be doing.
Hmm.
And so I came out as trans. I just was like, am I non-binary? Am I a woman? Do I want to be on hormones? Do I want to have surgery?
Mm,
And
there's so
so
much options
there's
as
so many
well.
different ways to transition. And that's one thing I do want to say is that um, not all trans people do surgeries. Not all trans
Yeah.
people want to do surgeries or do hormones or any. And there's so many different ways to transition. I think that's what's so beautiful about trans people is they are literally, creating themselves from scratch. They
Mm,
are the most authentic people I know
they
because
are.
they have no other choice but to be
Hmm.
themselves. And so for me, it was a lot about giving myself permission, honestly. And at the beginning, I didn't know what my aesthetic was. I didn't know what to do with clothes. I didn't know what to do with makeup. I was pretty much bald when I started transitioning.
Oh.
And so that had a lot to do with like, I don't even know if I want to transition to quote unquote be a woman or
Mm,
quote unquote fully transition, there's no such thing as fully transitioning. It's just,
yeah.
but I digress. I didn't know how I wanted to identify. I just know I needed to transition.
Mm,
And I knew that there's a lot of internalized transphobia within
mm,
myself because I didn't know if I could ever quote unquote pass as a
yeah.
woman. And I don't like that term, but that's just the reality
No,
of,
I understand. That's
yeah,
like a
because,
concern when you're completely
right,
transitioning
because I don't want to,
from a
yeah,
body to another body, right?
yeah. And I didn't know if I could even quote unquote pull anything off, right? Because I was bald. I've always been an athlete, so I was really, really built, and I didn't really
Mm,
know it was possible. And so I was like, you know what? For the first time in my life, I was like, let's just take things as they come,
hmm.
and let's start with a little bit of hormones. Let's see how you feel, and we don't have to make any decisions. You can constantly be evolving. And I gave myself permission to do that. Maybe I will wear wigs. Maybe I hate wigs. Maybe
Mm.
I will try dresses. Maybe I'll hate dresses. And I had to give
You had to
myself
keep
permission.
trying, and
Exactly.
yeah.
There was no manual to
So
what.
I'm curious to know when they give you hormones, what exactly happens? Like, how do you feel? Because you had
Yeah.
this man body, and so it's just I'm super curious to learn more about that.
Yeah, that's a great question. From the beginning, the first change that I noticed was really mental, where it just felt
Mm.
like this is correct. Like I felt like
How
even
does
though
it
I
does it
couldn't,
make you feel different in some
I
ways?
think that part of it is the placebo effect first, where you're
Mm.
just like, okay, I'm on the right path. I don't notice any changes yet, but they're coming.
Mm.
The first change that I noticed was I started to get hot flashes, like pretty intensely. And my boss at the time was also going through menopause, and so we were bonding over that. It was so funny. She's like, I have extra fans if you want a fan. And it was so funny. And I just was
Face
like,
fan, body
literally,
fan.
I just was like, all of a sudden, I was like, is it really hot in here? And everyone else was like, no, except for me and my boss who's going through menopause. You gain fat in different places in your body. You lose. I lost a lot of muscle, of muscle mass, which as an athlete was really hard to go through because I'm so used to like being able to run a certain speed and jump a certain height and do all those things. And as I started transitioning, I lost those abilities, but I was like, I'm so glad I am. Like, it means it's working. It's just like, it was all part of the experience for me. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Did you have like girls around you those days having crushes on you?
Honestly, because
I love six pack.
Yeah.
I can't have one. I mean, I can. I just don't work hard enough. But I would totally be drooling on a boy who's had
I feel like there are definitely girls around me who are like, honestly, if you were straight, like, I would definitely be into. It was fun. I mean, and at that point, I mean, I identify now as pansexual, where I don't really have a gender preference of who I love. But back then, I primarily dated men. And no, it was like I got facial feminization surgery, which was a like 10-hour procedure.
Wow.
So they lowered my hairline, they shaved down my brow bone, they lifted my brows a little bit. I had a rhinoplasty, they shaved down my jaw, they shaved down my chin, and then they shaved my trachea. So I still look like myself. Honestly, I look even more like my sister now. We've always looked like twins. It's so funny. And we get even more now. But that surgery helped a lot of just like, okay, it was really subtle. It really just kind of softened things a little bit.
Yeah.
I had a breast augmentation done, and then I had a fat transfer to my hips just to feminize my body. Just because I'm an athlete, I just was like, not that there's anything wrong with an athletic body, or there's anything wrong with my old face, or there's anything wrong with women who have small chests. It was just something that I felt I needed.
Sure.
For my journey.
And it's your body.
Exactly.
Right?
And
you can make a decision on how you want to.
Yeah. Any people.
Even women go through multiple, augmentations.
I always tell people all the time, most gender affirming surgeries are done by cis people.
Exactly.
Like, cis women getting boob jobs is gender affirming surgery. Like, guys who get hair implants, that's gender affirming surgery. It's all just trying to find your most authentic version of yourself and go for it. If you want to get it done, do it. Like, what's
one life.
Exactly.
Live the way you want to live.
Like,
I don't think we should ever live with regrets, because regrets are going to just take you to another path. And I always tell my kids as well, life is very long. You have to live on your terms, but remember how you define your terms, how you define every single day of your life, how you practice every single day of your life. From morning to night is called practice. That's what Michelle Obama always talks about. It's like you're practicing your future in your childhood days. This is what you're going to become one day. And I'm trying to teach my kids as well. And it's hard as a parent.
It's hard, because you want to, having breasts or having my face be more feminine does not make me more of a woman. I'm a woman now because of who I am.
Exactly.
And that's why I tell people all the time.
And people are going to look at that.
Yeah.
Taylor, how do you navigate the job market as a transgender woman and a woman of color? There's a lot of challenges that one has to go through even as a woman, I guess, especially in a lot of different professions. In IT, in tech, women are in minority today. So can you elaborate on that?
It's been really difficult. I'm not going to lie. And there's no singular answer for why, because of intersectionality, right? Some of it is my transness. Some of it is my queerness. Some of it is I'm brown, and some of it is I'm a woman, and some of it is all of those things combined, because you can't necessarily extrapolate those things. And so I feel like, and applying for jobs that I know that I would get interviews for, would get job offers in no time at all, and it is so much more of a struggle just to get through the door and just get interviewed. And sometimes it feels like, I always take those surveys after you do job application in the US. You have to, it's voluntary, but like, what is your gender? What is your
Oh my
race? Are
God.
you,
Can we like
oh my gosh.
shut those
And like,
questions?
I get it, but it almost feels like because I'm answering them accurately, I'm getting interviewed just so they can say, yep, we checked all these diversity boxes. We definitely interviewed someone, but we're still not going to hire her. And it's frustrating.
It is.
And I remember I reached out to my social media network and I was like, who has any advice on how to kind of navigate this market? And I got so many people who are like, don't let them know that you're trans. Don't let them know
Wow,
that you're queer.
why?
And that was my reaction where
I
I was
would
like,
never do that.
no, like that I don't want to be in an unsafe environment and I want to be
Because they're
somewhere.
going to know anyways.
Yeah. And I just was like, that I would rather be someone where my entire self is celebrated. I want to talk about my partners. I want to talk about my life. I
Absolutely.
want to be fully present. And I can't
Yeah.
be fully present if I'm feeling like I need to hide certain parts of me. And so I really disagreed. And I get it. For safety, for some people, it works. For some people, we call it stealthing, where you don't tell anyone anything. I get that. But it doesn't work for me. It has been all about forging my own path. Why not forge my path in my career? And so now I'm bouncing around a lot of ideas of, yes, I need to make a living right now, but what can I do that can marry all the things that I love to do?
Hmm.
I am a board member for the North American Gay Volleyball Association. I volunteered to speak at schools. I've ran trans support groups. I love helping people. I help people. I coach people through transition stuff all the time in my inbox.
Yeah.
And so why not get paid for it? So
Yeah.
we'll see what the next chapter brings for me. If it's personal training, if it's life coaching, if it's trying it out in the corporate world one more time. But I'm going into this kind of holding on to my values
Mm.
tight to my chest, where I'm not just going to sell out
Yeah.
and to make money, because money doesn't actually buy happiness.
No, it doesn't. Have that fighting spirit and never give up, because I know you're right there. And I think that's what I did. For 20 years, I was in evolving careers. Everybody came up to me and said, you're good at this. So I went and did that. You're good at this. I went and did that. So you won't even know what kind of careers I've had. I've had advertising, marketing, project management. And eventually, 2 years back, I started hearing my own self that I want to be an entrepreneur. So I did 3 entrepreneurial ventures and eventually landed into this. So it's interesting that once you start listening to your own gut, your own self, and you would know where you belong. And I think that is very true to yourself. And I don't think anybody should ever have a say on that. And once you actually start identifying what is your positive side, where you can contribute your success towards, you can be so powerful. And I think I missed that for 20 years, but I know that I have arrived.
I love that so much. Thank you.
Taylor, what are your thoughts on the current debates surrounding transgender competing in sports? And do you believe there are fair and inclusive ways to address these concerns?
I think the first thought that comes to mind is that it's really heartbreaking,
It
because a
is.
lot of people don't realize that behind all these stories, behind these debates, are people. And for me, my legitimacy as a person, as an athlete, being questioned every single day eats away at me.
Mm.
And I'm a full grown adult, and I can't imagine what it's like for kids out there who are seeing, like, oh, I don't belong anywhere. Oh, these people think this, these people think
Mm.
that. And I think, first and foremost, when people want to talk or debate about the subject, I think that it's really, really important to remember the people that are behind these stories and the
Mm.
people of the experience of trans people. And for some people listening to this might be the first time they've ever heard a trans person speak.
Yeah.
And it's great. I love that. That's why I like to tell my story, and I love
Yeah.
to do things like this, because it's important.
It is.
It's not all about the movie stars who are trans, even though
No.
there's very few of them. It's about the normal, quote unquote, people who are everyday that need need their stories to be told, because it's all about the human side and being familiar with people who are unlike you. And
Yeah.
fear comes from the unknown. And so if you can just be around people who aren't like you to see other stories, it's really, really important. There's been governing bodies. I mean, I'm a swimmer and a volleyball player in those
Mm.
worlds. I think in volleyball you have to have been on hormone suppressants for at least a year, and I think in swimming I
Okay.
think it's 3 years, which I think is completely fair. I think that's actually, I mean,
Yeah.
within a year or two, like your hormones and the way your body changes is so different, especially me
And it's a long
personally.
time that you're even
It's
not competing,
yeah,
right?
yeah, and so there's definitely ways to do it, and I think that it's really hard to just transition in general. I think that what people need to realize is that people are not transitioning for sports. I transitioned to stay alive. People
Mm,
are transitioning just to stay alive. Sports and all that is not even on their mind.
wow.
You know, we just want to stay alive and we want to have our happy place. Like that is the way I survived all of this chaos throughout my life was sports. That was my haven, was being on the
Mm,
volleyball court and being amongst my friends was like nothing else existed but this volleyball court and this net. And that's it. That's all I had to think about for an
mm,
hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. But I think that the debate is honestly, it's a red herring for me. I
mm.
don't think that it's actually the issue that people are actually concerned about who are very loud. I think it is about controlling women's bodies and it's about controlling women. I think it's about, you know, if we're wanting to quote unquote protect women's sports, we should be protecting women from predators. We should be protecting
Yeah,
people. We should be promoting equal pay. We should
I
be
like that.
promoting, you know, women's sports, you know, on ESPN, on the major networks. I mean, you go on social
Yeah,
media.
there's a huge debate rolling every news channel about this.
Yeah.
And
And if we're really wanting to focus on women's sports, and we should, I absolutely agree, but this is not the way. I mean, I think it was 2022 in college sports there's something like 50,000 athletes,
yeah,
and statistically speaking there's probably about 1% of people are trans.
yeah.
So if that was accurate, then there should have been probably 500 or 50 athletes, or was it 50 athletes in, you know, in college sports that were trans, and there's like one, maybe
Mm.
two, I think, that year. So it's like we are debating trans people in sports, but we're not even debating about that many people.
So have you found support in the allyship in the sports community?
I've been very lucky living in Seattle, and also being part of, you know, NAGFA, the North American Gay Volleyball Association, and all those things. I, to my face, have not faced any debate or anything about my
Mm.
participation in women's volleyball
Oh,
here.
that's
Everyone,
great.
it's
Mm-hmm.
I'm very lucky, and I know that's not the case in a lot of places. But I
Yes.
go to tournaments and I go to all over, and it is we're just playing volleyball. And if you're better than me, then you're better than me. And it's about, like, you know, there are women who are taller, cis women who are taller than me, cis women who are stronger than me. And that's just biodiversity in
Yeah.
general. Like, men aren't automatically stronger, faster than women. And there is the intersection of racism with that too. Because you
There
think
is a
about
huge racism factor.
all the women who are always accused of being quote unquote men or too masculine, they're almost always brown. You think about like Serena and Venus Williams, for example,
My
constantly throughout
God,
their
their
entire
story
careers.
is
Like, it's
unbelievable.
so maddening, and it's all like you only hear complaints when the athlete is really, really good. And I think that it's just a shame. It weighs on me so much, just to be completely just to be like my existence to be debated almost
Yeah,
every single day,
exactly.
and it's sad. But I think I I have faith in the future. I hope that we're moving in the right
I hope
direction.
so
I think that
too.
there's more voices like
I think more
mine.
voices need
Yeah,
to be heard
exactly.
and more people need to come out and talk about it
I
so
agree.
that there is no news.
Yeah,
This is not a news. There's enough stuff in the world to cover about this.
yeah. We should be about inclusion instead of
Yeah,
trying to exclude one or two people and making a huge
absolutely.
debate about it.
So true. Taylor, it's been so much fun for me to interview you, invite you here, and learn so much about you. You know, this is my first time interviewing somebody from your community, and I've been very vocal about the fact that I love to support every single woman and man in any parts or any shapes of their life because I feel if we don't support each other, we don't belong to humanity in general. And I'm so glad and fortunate that you decided to come here. We are wrapping up to the final segment, and it is my most special one, which is called the burning questions.
Yeah.
So, my first question, tell us the secret nobody knows about you.
So this is a hard question for me because I wear my
You're
heart
an
on my
open book.
sleeve. I'm an open book. If you ask me a question, I will answer it. I think what people that a lot of people don't know about me or sometimes don't believe is I'm actually a very, very socially anxious person.
Is it?
I come off very extroverted because
Mm-hmm.
I love creating conversations. I can create conversations. But it takes a lot out of me actually. And when I'm not in my element, if I'm in a new place or
Mm.
I am very much a homebody where I really actually enjoy my alone time. I
Yeah.
think that my persona online sometimes gives off this like, oh, she's always out and about, she's always really social. And I can be, but I also, after I'm social, after I do things, I'm like, okay, I need like
My
silence. I
time,
need some like,
silence.
I need a candle. I need a long bath. Yeah, I get really, really socially anxious. And honestly, I
Mm.
think it comes from being raised by immigrant parents and
Mm.
not knowing where I belong. So I'm just
Yeah.
like, I never know where I'm supposed to be in a conversation or what I'm supposed to be doing. But
Well, you did wonderful today.
thank you.
So I hope we didn't make you
No,
anxious.
I still love being social, but I'm naturally
Mm.
in my nature a very socially anxious person.
And if I could teleport you anywhere in the world right now, where would it be?
I honestly, I've been wanting to go back to the Philippines so bad. If
Mm.
I could go to a new place, it'd be Spain. It's on my list. But I would used to go because both my parents are from the Philippines, and the last time I went was 2015, so almost 10 years ago. And it was the first time as I went as an adult where I felt like I was homesick for a place that I wasn't actually from. My heritage is from there, but I didn't grow up there. But
Mm.
the last time I left, I was like, I love it here. The people are so friendly, they're so nice. I felt more judged in the United States for not knowing
Mm.
Tagalog than I did in the Philippines for not knowing Tagalog. Like they were
Wow.
like, okay, cool, so you only speak English. Awesome. But
Mm.
sometimes in Filipino American cultures are kind of looked down upon for not speaking
Yeah,
Tagalog.
that's true.
But I would love to go back to the Philippines for sure. Yeah.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Taylor,
you for
again for
having
coming to the
me.
show. We absolutely enjoyed every single part of your
Yeah,
story.
I think what you're doing is very, very important in telling all sorts of different stories of women who have made it, people who have changed careers, people who are
Mhm.
still figuring things out. I think it's so important to hear everyone's stories because it's so enriching
So true.
to know an unfamiliar story and to see different perspectives of life.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Her journey reminds us of the power of embracing one's true identity, regardless of the challenges that may arise. Today, as Taylor shared her extraordinary narrative with us, we are reminded of the courage it takes to live a life so different from societal norms. Let her voice echo beyond these conversations, inspiring others to embrace their true self and live authentically in a world that often demands conformity. Thank you, Taylor, for sharing your remarkable journey with us, and may your message continue to resonate, empowering countless others to embrace their true, unique path. Please do not forget to like, share, follow, and subscribe. This is Women in the Making, signing off.